Hello, my name is Andrew, and welcome to another Chill with TFC session. In this series, we hope to bring on interesting and relevant people to help us learn better from various perspectives. Life is not always about learning from the people you agree with. Different perspectives shape us to be more well-rounded in our thinking. So, in the pursuit of the life we love, while managing our finances well, we also need to take care of our career. My guest today made conscientious and strategic decisions to craft her career. She's a blogger who often writes about topics that are close to millennials in Singapore, and she's also one of LinkedIn top voices. Let's welcome Jeraldine Phneah.
Okay, so my name is Jeraldine. I care about the challenges and aspirations of our generation. So I create content around how we can all cope with the high cost of living, build rewarding careers, as well as lead more meaningful lives.
So today we're going to focus on the rewarding careers and meaningful lives part because
Yes,
it's
correct.
kind of closely
Actually,
related.
all these three topics are kind of linked. Yeah.
I first knew about you from your blog, of course, and you've been blogging about quite a wide range of topics, but it doesn't really differ much from these three things that you talk about.
Yes, correct. So a lot of people think that, if you just write about like finance, you need to focus specifically on finance alone. But for me, I don't categorize my topic by the categories itself. My key focus is really about who am I writing for. So for me, I really write for our generation, and every topic that is related to them will be things that I will cover.
Okay, so do people write in to you, email to you, or comment on your blog and ask you questions or advice? What do they ask you?
Yeah, I think that happens pretty often, right? Not just from, email, of course. Email is kind of like one of the channels. I do get a lot of, LinkedIn messages, Instagram messages, Facebook comments and stuff like that. I think IGDM is particularly popular with...
So they slide into your DMs to ask you a professional question?
Yes. They ask me
Okay.
a professional question. Typically, it depends on the topics that I'm writing about recently, right? Like last year, I got tons of like finance question, but this year there's slightly a shift towards maybe a little bit more softer topics like mental health, a little bit more on career planning, meaning, finding yourself and stuff like that. So I got questions related to that as well.
Okay, off your mind, like what are the top three questions, for example, that you receive more often?
Okay, so looking at the past 2 years, right, the kind of questions I'll receive the most often would be like, should I leave my job, right? And then there's something like really difficult to answer, especially if you don't have so much context, right? So they would just give me things like, salary information, the salary that they want to get and stuff like that, where they are at now, the struggles they are facing at work. And because I don't get the full picture, my role is really more of, asking them questions, right? Diving deeper into like, what motivates you, what kind of like things are important to you in a job and stuff like that. So from there they can discover the answers by themselves. So I try not to be so prescriptive, but more of, playing the role as a friend, right, who is asking questions, and helping them to use these questions that I'm asking to uncover the answers on their own. So that's the first kind of question that I get. Yeah.
Should I leave my job?
Yeah.
That's the first kind of question you get. But,
Most common question.
well, interestingly, you think it's COVID and people want more job security, but you see all the news articles, headlines saying that people are quitting their jobs, right? And therefore, you're getting more questions of that nature.
Yes, correct. I guess that, I don't have the concrete answer as to why like everybody is like, no, not everybody, but like maybe many people are thinking about like leaving their roles. But my guess is probably because spending time alone at home gives you a little bit more time to reflect, right? And then when you minus all the other colleagues, like the social element of work, the nice office and stuff like that, people really think about like the meaning of what they're doing, the kind of like life that they want. And then this really changes their perspective, and helps them to figure out like, hey, maybe staying where I am now is not so suitable for me. Perhaps I should try something else, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you have a framework for that? Like, how do you advise someone who asks you that question?
Yeah, so when I first received this question, it would be like, should I leave my job and stuff like that? And then the first question I asked them is like, what do you want in a career, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow,
because
that's tough.
yeah,
That
because
could be hard.
yeah, this really something that people don't even think about. Like, how does a career fit into your life? Because people know the conventional route, like, oh, I leave school, I graduate, I get good results, I come and work and stuff like that. Then they don't dig deeper into the second layer. It's like, what am I working for? Correct? Because everyone works for different reasons. Yeah.
So, like, think of the most recent example. You ask the person, what do you want from your career? What is the answer you got?
Yeah, they say that, oh,
Money.
yeah, there's so many things I want,
Work-life
like,
balance.
yeah, more fun. Oh, I don't like my boss and stuff like that. So what I try to encourage them to do is that, there's no perfect job in this world, right? Like every job, no matter how much you love it, there will be some gaps of sorts. So it would be good to kind of like first, write down everything that you want, then kind of like prioritize like what are the key important things to you. because that not only helps you find the job that you want, it also helps you to stay in the job because you know like exactly why you are here, and then also like what are your deal breakers, and then what keeps you going, right?
What answers have you gotten when you ask people what is it that they want from their jobs?
People will always say very fluffy things like, meaning, right? But what is meaning? Meaning also can mean different things, right? Is it about giving back to society type of meaning, or is it like personal fulfillment type of meaning, or is it more like, learning, right? So meaning can be defined in different ways. So I would try to ask them like, what do you mean by meaning, right? So my role is really not to prescribe like, here, you should leave, right? Leave, kind of thing, because at the end of the day, I'm not, a career counselor, or not fully like aware about all their life circumstances, and we're just talking on DM, right? So
It's like you're going so deep into this particular person, and then he or she is telling you about what meaning. This is what I'm looking for in life, because work is a part of life, right? And it's almost like a life coach, but you're not charging, I assume.
no, because I'm not certified, right? I don't think I'm a professional. I mean, how I've always been communicating with my audience is that, I'm just learning like all of you. I'm passionate about these topics because I think that would make an impact to our lives. So I'm here to, figure out answers together with you. I'm not the expert in this topic. I'm just a peer who's just sharing like what I've learned, what has worked for me.
Okay, so let's say I asked you, and then you told me what am I looking for, and I said meaning, and then you probe me further.
Yeah.
And let's say I want to have work-life balance, and I want my job to feel meaningful. I feel that I'm contributing something. How would you carry on this conversation?
And then how do you define contribution? Contribution has many layers.
Okay.
Contribute to what? Your colleagues' lives, your company goals, or to the society, right? So probing it right into different elements, right, to find out like what do they really mean, and that's how I actually help them to figure out the answers on their own.
I would like to leave an impact on society.
So what about your current job doesn't give you that?
I have to make up a role on the spot. Let's say I'm doing a marketing role. Okay.
Yeah.
Not really. It's a B2B product. I don't really see how it helps me play an active role in being a contributor to the society, or not just say society, but my community. Let's just talk about that. Yeah.
Which community is such a broad word, right? Like which aspect of community are you looking at?
Let's just say my neighborhood. But couldn't I, get into what do you call it? Get into community initiatives or like charity organizations, for example, or religion, for example. Like, does it have to be part of my job?
Yeah, so this is the thing I'm trying to get them to figure out. So I ask them like, what makes you stay, right? So if they say, oh, I need the money, then of course I will not say that, leave, quit, and then do pro bono, right? I would say, why not, do you think it would be impossible to, maybe perhaps stay in your current role since you like so many things? You like your colleagues, you like the pay and everything, but at the same time carve out, your weekends or, after working hours to use your skills that you pick up in a corporate job to contribute to, maybe the NGO that who represents a cause that you care about. Yeah, so my role is not to prescribe, it's really to ask questions, because everybody knows what's best for themselves. Here I am is just to share knowledge and to facilitate that whole process of self-discovery.
So what we've just done in this mock-up scenario is that you're really getting me to think and explore and really dig deeper into what I really want. So if I were to reflect that back onto you, how and why did you get into your current career?
Yeah, so for me, I also went through this whole reflective process on my own. When I was in university, right, I had this idea that, I have to do a job that I am passionate about, like I feel excited about and stuff like that. And that's really like something that many people believe in, especially, when they're young, they have big lofty dreams and stuff like that. Not saying that there is wrong, because, personally, I think that if you are someone who is doing a job for a passion, you are, absolutely lucky, right? But how many people can do that? So that got me thinking like, okay, what is the meaning of a job to me, correct? Like, what do I want in a career? And I thought about a few things. So for me, of course, financial independence is kind of like a key objective for me. So definitely compensation plays a part. And the second thing that I care about is, of course, having future proof, because, I do lots of house visits and stuff like that. And a very common scenario that I sometimes come across would be an not elderly, a middle-aged person with maybe 2 kids, elderly parents to support, but he's retrenched because, they either like move overseas, the company moves some of his work overseas and outsources it, or maybe perhaps he has not been able to keep up with the way technology is going and stuff like that. So that's really a situation that I don't want to be in. So being future proof is definitely something very critical for me, both in terms of equipping myself with the right skills, right, as well as aligning myself to the industries which are booming. So I'm in cloud computing and all that. And I guess that no, not cloud. I mean cloud. I'm working in cloud basically. And I guess the third thing that really matters to me is, of course, like having the work-life balance, right? Because for me, work is just a revenue-generating portion in my life, and I will give my best when I'm in my job. But I think that my life is really so much more than just my work. It also has people I love, like my family, my friends, and being able to contribute to my generation and helping other people through my content creation process and volunteer work as well.
So you just mentioned 3 criteria. Number 1 is your financial independence. Number 2 is that it's future proof. And number 3 is your work-life balance.
Yeah,
How does
correct.
your current role help in all of these 3 criteria?
Actually, it really aligns to all of that, so I'm super happy. But I think what
It's
I
a sales
described,
role at a cloud company. Is that
it's a software as a service company. Yeah.
right?
Correct. So basically, I think that it really aligns with what I'm looking for, my career path as a whole. But of course, if it comes to career, these are the criteria. When it comes to job, there's also one more element that I look at, right? Because career and a job is different. A job is like a role in a company, and a career is like a role, I guess. Yeah. So when it comes to a job, I do look at one more thing, which is of course the boss, right? The boss is absolutely critical, and it can make or break someone's like working experience.
Okay, so you mentioned, a job is a function,
Yeah, jobs.
but a career is more like a path.
Yeah.
And whether it leads you to the future, that's the future proof part,
Okay,
right?
like I'll explain, like, okay, maybe career is like doctor, right? And then job is like
GP at a
GP
clinic.
at X clinic.
At X clinic, yeah. And then but your whole entire career path is
doctor.
as a doctor, what you're gonna do and all that.
That's how I define
Yeah, so
it,
that's how you define it. I mean, we all have different definitions,
Yeah.
but this is how you carve out your path for yourself
Yeah.
and your definitions for yourself.
Correct,
So
correct.
a sales role, correct me if I'm wrong. So financial independence part, it's really dependent on how much sales you're getting in.
Yep.
So that settles financial independence part. Well, later we can talk about how do you excel in a sales job. Number 2 is your future proof, and is that why you're in a software as a service company? Like you see that in the future we all need this.
Yeah, I mean the whole world is moving towards cloud, right? So that makes sense to position myself in this field.
How about work-life balance then?
Well, I think the good thing about, if I want to do sales, right, there's a lot of options that I can choose from. You can sell, every job basically needs sales and
Yes.
all. But I picked B2B because I was thinking that, well, my customers may not be awake, not awake, at work, right, after 6 p.m. So nobody like disturbing me during this.
Okay, because if it's B2C, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're insurance agents.
Yeah.
Then, at 8 p.m., I'm concerned about my own insurance policies.
Yeah.
I might text you. But if B2B, 6 p.m., pang kang, I'm not going to text Geraldine.
That was
I'm
my
not gonna
logic.
email you.
My logic back then when I was
That was
choosing.
your logic back then. Okay.
It's
So
kind of worked out for me.
it's kind of worked out for you, and I'm going to guess that the flexibility plays a part in the work-life balance.
Yeah, of course. That's why I picked tech, because tech companies tend to be more, flexible with the way you do things. I would say that, in tech, I've been so lucky to meet leaders who are very progressive, not really so much more of the traditional mindset, like come at 9, leave at 6 kind of thing. Yeah, really more, of course there are people like that, but, in the past few years, I've been very lucky to work with, very, very open-minded bosses who really trust the employees to, spend their time in a way that is meaningful and to get the job done, basically.
Yeah, because someone else in a similar role, meaning tech and sales, might not have work-life balance, but you manage to find a company that gives you that.
Yeah.
And which is why you mentioned, on top of these 3 criteria, you need to have the boss and your colleagues as well.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so let's talk about bosses and colleagues. How do you manage them?
Yeah, so I think that is really important. In any role that you are doing, that is, you have to kind of like work well with your superiors and also your peers. So one of the other questions I get is that from younger people is that I joined this company, right? And I joined remotely, right? How do I get to know my colleagues, right? And all that. So I think it's really about being proactive, right? Like kind of like scheduling like dinner, arranging like one-to-one Zoom chats and all that, and just trying to figure out in this organization who would be the people who are, you're going to work the closest with, right? Who are able to support your goals and you can support theirs as well. And, who do you find interesting? Who do I learn from? And then map all these things out and just kind of like be proactive about reaching out to them for lunch, for dinner and stuff like that.
So how do you do that in a remote role? So you're talking about, let's say I'm in Singapore, but I'm working from home, and then I should proactively reach out to my colleagues or my boss to like meet up at least for a meal or something, so that I get FaceTime, right? Face to face with my people I'm working with.
Yeah, as much as I love technology, I think nothing really replaces the whole face-to-face element of things.
I think that's truly a concern nowadays, especially with COVID and work from home, remote work. Out of sight, out of mind, right? We're all worried, and we're all worried that the bosses might be thinking, okay, actually, you're not in office. Well, I don't really need you for the role, right? How would you advise someone who's worried about something like that?
You mean what I'm hearing from you is basically their concern is that if they are not seen, they may be forgotten.
And your solution was to actually get the FaceTime, right? But how do you actually execute it? How do you bring it up to your colleagues? Hey, let's meet up for lunch.
Usually I start off with a Zoom call of sorts, right? And like say, hey, I saw that I just joined, right? This is what I'll be doing. I know that I might be working with you quite a bit and supporting you in these few areas as well. So let's have a catch up. And then during that video thing, try to build some rapport and like, hey, oh, where you live? Oh, I live near there too, or like somewhere there. Or I used to study in that district. I'll be there, next 2 weeks or something. Like, how about we catch up, right? Yeah, I'd love to see you in person and all that.
So someone's got to do it, because this just reminds me, right? Okay, there's this person, he's called Chong Sun. He's part of the financial coconut team. He's in Malaysia. He's based in Malaysia. So we work together a bit over live stream, like we host the live stream together. And then like over Slack, he's just saying, we should really just get online to get to know each other better. And I said, sure. And then after that, I didn't follow up after that as well.
Yeah.
So that's usually what might happen.
Yeah.
If I talk to a colleague, let's say I just joined a company, I'm relatively new, and I say, hey, I think it would be good to, well, maybe not a meal, maybe just catch up over Zoom first, but it's still a bit weird, right? And the other person might say, sure, but didn't realize you were serious about fixing a call.
Just add one more line. Let me send you an invite. What time works for you?
Okay.
Yeah, this is like 1 second to solve this problem. That
Okay. And how do you approach it? Because you also don't want to be too objective oriented about it, right? I want to get to know you better, and there are certain objectives I want to fulfill, right? Because it's truly being casual and getting to know someone as a friend.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess it's like it's like a date, right? You don't like, my objective is to find
get married, have 3 kids,
Yeah.
lay out the whole plan. Yeah, okay.
Because that person may not end up to be the correct person for that, right? And who knows, you make a good friend in that case. So just keep the agenda open, like, I want to get to know you, and stuff like that. I want to learn more about your experience working here and all that, and just like arrange something. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm guessing that if the other party, or if like a few colleagues are not too willing to have that phone call with you, then probably that might not be a very friendly environment as well.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's a way of like knowing.
Yeah, and I have a trick to get people to say yes to meeting.
Tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, offer to treat.
Okay, this is for face to face.
Yeah, let me buy you a meal, because Singaporeans love free food. Me too, I love free food as well.
Okay. Or like you mentioned, where do we stay? We stay nearby. There's a good
good like
restaurant
bak
over
chor
there.
mee,
my treat. Since I'm new, for example, let's say
Yeah.
I just joined this company, I want to make this effort, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, but that's for Singapore. How about if my company is overseas, my colleagues are overseas?
Okay, then no choice. We only have to do it via Zoom.
We can only do it via online meetings.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. How else do you build relationships with your colleagues? From your own example.
I guess it's like things like giving praises. Yeah, especially when you have people supporting you and stuff like that. I think sometimes that kind of recognition is very important, and because we're all working from home, and stuff like that, you don't really receive that when you get a job done, right? So I think giving regular praises is pretty good. Being able to kind of like say that, I really like this, highlight something, make their day and stuff like this. Another way to build a rapport with someone that you're actually working with as well.
You mentioned earlier that you also want to get to know what their objectives are, or what is important to them. How do you ask that question?
Just kind of like, hey, you are in this role, right? Maybe you are doing like a junior sales role right now. So, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? Why do you join and stuff like that? So it's true, asking questions that you can kind of find out like where they're heading, or maybe they don't know where they're heading, right? So you can kind of like guide them on that process or so. You can also ask them like, what do you like to do in your free time? You play basketball. Hey, I want to learn. Let's organize something.
That's a more casual question, but the question before that was that's a more casual question, but the question before that was, where do you see yourself in 3 years as a junior programmer, for
I
example?
mean, if you're talking to someone who are like who's more junior, you can ask
Okay,
that.
like,
Yeah.
are you my boss? Hey, don't so serious lah. You know what if my
So it
reaction
really,
is like
okay,
that?
all these things I'm sharing, you know, it works for me based on the context that I'm at. But of course, cater it to the organization that you are at, right? So I guess like usually during the first 2 weeks, you can kind of get a sense of like the culture. I don't know how to explain how to sense it, but it's like intuition versus observation.
Okay.
Kind of like understand what kind of company it is, what kind of people they hire, and then from there can tailor your approach to engage them accordingly.
Because I understand your intention for asking the question is really to find out what they are looking for and what's really important to them.
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
why
yeah.
the question, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Let's say my role is a junior programmer.
Yeah.
If
I
it's
think
just,
the way you ask it also.
Yeah, the way
like,
you ask it,
Hey, where you
yeah.
see yourself in 3 years kind of things like, oh.
that's an interview question.
Yeah,
That's
it's
one.
like,
Yeah.
like, hey, just curious, you know, like, oh, you've been working here for some time. So it's like how you ease into that question, right?
Okay.
Instead of like checklist kind of
Yeah,
thing.
checklist, which is we go back to, you don't want to be too objective oriented about it because it's like a
Yeah.
date. You're trying to get to know someone better.
Correct. It's like you meet a girl for first date. Excuse me, you got a car? You got a house? Right.
Right. Or vice versa, and then you ask all the questions that you're looking out for.
Yeah.
Could you think of one example though, like someone whose character is a bit more logical? Like, how do you approach this question then?
You mean like, what do you mean
Let's
by
say
that?
you just joined this company, you're new, and you really want to get to know me in this. I'm role playing a junior programmer, and I am a more logical person. I'm not antisocial. It's just that I like to do my own things. And then you just join this company. We might need to work together because you're gonna sell something that I program. How do you approach it?
I think for logical people, or people who are like more, I guess introverted and stuff like
yeah,
that, right?
let's
The
put
approach
it
is
that
a
way.
bit more different, right?
Yeah.
It's not like go for drinks.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
treat you. Nah, it's okay. Don't treat me. I don't want to leave my house. I'm working from home also, and I don't want to leave home.
I think the approach is a bit different, right? It's more like, you know, a softer kind of like approach. Like, oh, can you help me with this? Oh, I'm very curious to learn about how this works. Can you explain it? Because when people help you, they get invested in the
Okay. That's a good point. You brought it up, which is if someone helps you,
Yeah.
we think that we have to help people, right?
Yeah.
But when someone helps you, it makes them feel or think that, hey, you know, like you're someone worthy of helping. That's one.
Yeah.
And
Ownership as well.
ownership.
Yeah.
And if
Invested. Yeah.
and the favor is kind of like on your side. That means, well, in a way, I don't feel indebted to you.
Yeah. Something like that.
I
Yeah.
felt like I've helped you this one time,
Correct.
and then you know that builds a relationship.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to emphasize here is also like, you know, everybody is different. So it's not just like taking my what has worked for me today and then paste it to your own context. A few things to look out for again. Look at your company's culture. Observe for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Just observe people. See, try and understand them and stuff like that. It helps if you are a bit familiar with stuff like, I guess like certain frameworks like DISC, and some people like to use MBTI and stuff like that to try and like, you know,
Profile their personalities.
profile at least like a slight understanding of this person and stuff like that, and then also catering your approach accordingly, like, because the way you engage like an introvert extrovert will be completely different, right?
Okay. Yeah, so an introvert might not be so willing to go out on a meal with you,
Yeah.
but he or she might be okay with doing a Zoom call, and then you do the Zoom call.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Don't force a meet up with a meal with that person.
Yeah, especially if they're not comfortable. Yeah.
How do you identify what are the aspects of company culture that you need to know about? When you say company culture, what do I look out for?
I guess there's a few things that you can look at when you're trying to find out about a company's culture, right? So Glassdoor is also one of the things that you can look at. A lot of people say like Glassdoor is not accurate and stuff like that, but for me, I feel that there's no smoke without fire, right? So it's always good to kind of like it gives you. It's so far been accurate based on my own experience in you know, working, you know, interviewing at different companies and stuff like that. Second is of course the background of the people, right? Yeah, if they all maybe study a certain kind of topic or stuff like that. Typically people would be of a certain personality. I mean, it's not about judging, but just trying to come up with some like ideas of, you know, what they are at. Like for example, this company had a lot of SMU students like you, definitely like, you know, outspoken, right? Polished. I mean, that's my image of a SMU student basically.
Understand.
Yeah.
So you might have this preparation work, but you go in with an open mind because
of course.
not everybody's the same.
Yes, correct.
Okay, because when we talk about culture, it's just so hard to talk about it in specific terms, right? What about the culture?
Maybe just observing norms, right? Maybe it's a norm for people to do Zoom lunch, right? That kind of thing.
Okay.
Like lunch together. Or maybe it's norm for people to like arrange catch-ups and stuff like that. So you want to like align yourself with these norms also. Maybe you can push a bit of the boundaries, but largely still align with that. Yeah.
I think one part of culture is communication styles. So what communication styles have you observed?
Could you share a little bit more details?
Yeah, for example, like do they hop onto a meeting, or they all prefer email, or do they gossip in the pantry? I mean, I'm trying to quantify this word culture a little bit more.
Okay. So of course, culture is such a broad word, but since you brought up the point of communication styles, I mean, it could be simple things like looking at, do they prefer Zoom or Google Hangouts, right? Do they communicate on Slack more or WhatsApp kind of thing? So it's about the channel, and also like the way that people write emails and stuff like that. You kind of get a sense like, is this a formal, informal kind of culture and all that. Yeah.
Okay, is it appropriate to send an email after 6 p.m., for example? I mean,
Yeah.
some culture allows that, some culture will frown upon that. So you need to
Correct.
identify all of
Some
these.
cultures celebrate that.
And you know that in Gmail you can schedule
Yeah.
your email, right? Like I wrote this email at 5 p.m. but I scheduled it at 9 p.m. So it
Don't
looks
9
like I'm
p.m.
working.
9 p.m. too obvious. You must do like 10, 17. Wow.
Okay, so it's more organic, more natural, right? Okay, are you putting yourself on the line to say that you encourage that, or
I mean, if there's the culture and they celebrate and reward that, and you don't want to sacrifice your hours, right? I mean, that's one of the ways that you can go about.
Before we move on to the next thing, like, is there any other thing about culture that we should look out for off your mind right now?
I guess like for me, when I think about culture, I think about this quote that the fish rots from the head. So culture to me is something that is defined by the leadership, because people will recruit people who are similar to them, correct?
Okay.
Typically, we like people who are similar to us. We recruit people who are similar to us. So if I really don't get a good sense of culture, I'll just look on top and I'll see like, what are these leaders like? And then from there, I'll be able to understand like, how things are shaped within an organization.
A fish rots from the head.
Yeah, that's a quote. I don't know if it's really true that a fish rots from the head, but that's like a quote. Like,
You got to fact check that.
Yeah, I gotta fact check that, but it's
the
a
idea
common
is that,
quote. Yeah,
it's from the leadership. So when you go into a company, do you identify the leaders, including the non-official leaders, maybe the influencers, gatekeepers?
I try to look at the people who are in the company for the longest time, and I try to look at the leaders of the company, the people who are managing teams as well, and just to get a good sense of like who they are, what they are like, and then from there I'll be able to kind of like get a good sense of the culture and what is generally the office kind of environment going to be like also.
Sometimes, the person with the title might not be the decision maker, right? How do you approach something like that?
What do you mean by that?
So, for example, we talk about influencers or like people who have an influence over other people's opinions, but they might not be the CEO or even the directors, and people maybe crowd around them, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you identify people like that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, because when we talk about the concept of power, it's not really about status and rank, right? Some people have different kind of powers, and some people have maybe, I don't know if it's the correct word, but social power, I guess. So perhaps it would be good to also look for these people and try and like figure out like what makes them do well and try and learn from them as well.
Okay, let's talk about bosses. We've spoken about interacting with your colleagues, but how do you manage your boss? We've heard that term, but how do you actually do it?
I think that when you're hired by someone, it's really your responsibility to kind of like find out like what makes them tick and how to best work with them. So before I join any company, I try to research the boss. Like I will ask like common friends, common connections, and I try to like read up on them and stuff like that. I even go to extent to find like their Carousel profile and see like the reviews. Yeah.
Carousel.
I did that once, yeah.
If they're selling things on Carousel, you can see whether they are good or they lowball.
I mean, that's a very interesting story was that before I joined Salesforce, I was being hired by this guy, and then like I was thinking like, oh no, I don't know much about him. I can't tell his personality that well, so I went to Google him and stuff, and then I found his Carousel profile, and then like the comments were so good, and I was thinking like, wow, if he just sell like a $30 item and he's so nice, right? That means this person is like, I mean, who you are is how you treat people, basically. So I took that as a good testimonial, and turns out he was really a great guy to work for.
Most people will go on LinkedIn, but you took it a step further. Of course, you should check out LinkedIn, but there's always Carousel.
Because LinkedIn is what people want to show sometimes, right? But then Carousel is like I don't know whether you can fake reviews, right? But I don't think so.
I don't think
Yeah.
you don't really have an incentive to do that unless you are carousel power seller or
Yeah,
something.
correct.
Yeah, but it kind of gives you a sense of how that person is like.
Yes, correct. Or you can even check with like common friends, and stuff like that. But of course, take everything with a pinch of salt as well, because sometimes when people say negative things, it could be their own biases. Yeah, so just of course take it as a pinch.
Just like a restaurant with bad reviews doesn't mean that the restaurant is really bad.
Yes.
I mean, some reviews might be fake and things like you just take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, then so you get to know your boss better. That's number one before you join a
I
company.
mean, you need to understand someone before you know how to work with them. Correct. So it's like kind of like, and I'm sure that a good boss will also try to understand you, so that they know how to adjust their management style to kind of like align with you as well. So it's a kind of mutual process kind of thing, because a lot of things would depend on your manager, right? Your success in the company. Things like your happiness level in the company as well. So it makes sense to kind of like invest that little bit of time to try and like learn more about them, learn what they like, learn what they dislike. During the interview, I always ask people like, what defines a player to you, right, in a company, so that you know what are the things they look out for. And then even with that, it doesn't mean that what they say is what is real, because some people don't really understand themselves also, right? So you have to validate that, right? And one of the ways could be looking at people they have promoted. Yeah, people who they, or you can ask certain questions like, what was the worst hire you had, right? That kind of thing, like just to kind of like uncover like what makes them tick, and all that, so that you can adjust yourself accordingly to work well with them also.
So during the interview process where they ask you, do you have any questions for me? And that's where you ask, who do you consider to be an A player in your company? That's one.
Maybe not who, but how do you define?
What do
you define as an A player, right?
Okay.
For a team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what's really important for them.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And what's the second question that you've asked, which is
No, sometimes I may ask this question, but not all the time. But like, what's the worst hire you had?
worst hire? Okay. And you're asking this question. What are you trying to find out from this question?
To see if we are a fit. Because if his answer for A player is like someone who work until 3 a.m. every day, like,
Okay, but who would say that? Honestly, who would say that? Or they might say it in a different way. You got to pick it up.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So from your own experience, could you give examples? How do you identify the personality traits of your boss? And how do you work with that kind of
You
personality?
mean in the interview?
Not say after you join the company.
Oh, after you join the company.
Yeah. So there are three parts, I think. Number one is before you join, you check out Carousel, you check out LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And during the interview, you literally ask them questions because you are given an opportunity to find out more about
Yes,
the person and the
correct.
company.
Yeah.
But now you have joined the company. How do you build this relationship further with the boss?
So your question is, how do I read that person, or how do I build that?
How do you work with the personality?
Okay, let's say for example, this person is a little bit more anxious. Yeah, then you want to like make sure that every time they ping you on Slack, or chatter, or like email and stuff like that,
Reply
you're more
immediately.
timely, right?
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah. And it sometimes you don't get it right straight away, right? Like, I remember this time I had like my new boss from my previous company asked me, Jerry, do you know what's the difference between email and WhatsApp? Then my answer is like, oh, WhatsApp is on the phone and then email is the desktop, right? Then, no.
What was the answer that?
No, WhatsApp is like, I want more quicker replies, right? And then email is like, you can take your time, and like, oh, okay, I never thought of it this way. So then I will ask like, okay, what's your expected SLA?
At least this boss is direct and honest. I mean, some bosses might keep it to themselves, or they expect you to know. And then how do you find out then?
I think it's a lot of observation. It's going to be very hard for me to tell you. Like, it depends on that person, right? Looking at the characteristics and stuff like that. Yeah, but you're right to say that. You can also look at the way they interact with other employees, right? Is there someone they particularly don't like? And then you can try and figure out what about them they don't like, and then try not to embody those kind of similar traits and behaviors also. Because, it really takes a lot of observation, because nobody's going to tell you like, I'm a micromanager, right?
Nobody will
one's gonna
admit
say
that.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but you realize that person is a
And then
micromanager.
everyone say the same thing, like, I'm a very approachable, I can take feedback and all that. So how do you tell if it's real? You watch someone else give them feedback and how they respond to it. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't like, oh, okay, yeah, you are like this.
And then
what
you give
say.
your most honest feedback.
Correct.
And then you realize they should have done that.
I mean, this applies to everything in your life. Nobody is what they say. It's about what they do, right? So observe more rather than just listen to the words. Yeah.
Okay, so observe what they do,
Yeah.
and you can observe the way they interact with your other colleagues to find out who they really are as a person.
Yes, correct. I mean, I've made that mistake also, of course. Like someone said that he's very open to feedback, he's not a micromanager, and I just took it on like face value and stuff like that, right? And then after I realized like, oh, that's not the smartest thing to do, because nobody will ever say that, they are a micromanager. No one will ever say that they can't take feedback. Maybe they don't even know that they can't take feedback, right?
Right. Because there's the how do you identify yourself? How do you see yourself versus who you really are as well.
Correct.
Okay. How do you set expectations with your boss?
What do you mean
Or
by
boundaries. For example, because you talk about the WhatsApp and email example, and let's say this boss always WhatsApp you after working hours, and you want your work-life balance. How do you have a conversation like that? Sounds difficult.
Wow, this never happened to me. I'm so lucky that all my bosses are pretty much very appreciative of not appreciative, but maybe more they have clear boundaries, right? But if there's someone else in this situation like this, honestly, I don't have that much to advise because I've never been in that situation before. Yeah.
Okay. But how about other areas where you need to set expectations, like in terms of your KPIs or in terms of your working hours, how much time should you spend in the office versus going outside to meet clients? How do you set expectations?
I think expectation is typically set by the company culture again, right? What are people doing, correct? So
Okay.
if other people are doing something, then possibly that would be like allowed for you and all that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm also thinking that because you mentioned that during the interview process and before you even work at the company, you should find out as much as possible.
Yeah.
And therefore, if it's not a right fit, then maybe you shouldn't have taken
Yes, that's
a
why
job
the
in the first
interview
place.
process is so critical, right? Because a lot of people view interviews as like, oh, I'm here to impress someone, but it's also a two-way thing, right?
Dating,
Right?
back to dating
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
You like me, I must like you also.
Yes,
right?
correct. Yeah, so it's a two-way street, and just do your due diligence, do your research, because the last thing you want is to waste your time to join a company which it's not right for you, and then you have to like move out of it and then like do the difficult explanation and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so get all of this done even before you join.
Yeah, correct.
Based on your own criteria, which you mentioned at the start of the interview, whatever you're looking out for,
Yeah.
that's most important to you.
Correct.
And this answer really depends on the individual.
Yep.
Okay, so what is a rewarding career to you? Because that's the first thing you talk about as well.
Yeah, I guess when I do my introduction, I always talk about building rewarding careers, right? And that goes back to the first question that we talked about, like rewarding means different things to different people. But I guess that for me it's really the way I define it, right? Like being paid fairly, having that kind of like a balance, right? Not too much OT or anything, and then like the learning opportunities for growth, because when you learn and grow, you are future proof because you are picking up the correct skills and all that. So that's really what I define as a rewarding career. But of course there are other elements to that which other people care about. Like for example, some people really care about the friendships and the that they make at work, being able to go for drinks and stuff like that, which to me is kind of like a plus. Yeah.
How do you really identify these deeper things that you're looking out for? Because it does take quite a bit of work. I mean, of course, in your example, you ask them questions, get them thinking, right? But how is the process like for you? Do you journal? Do you sit down and meditate on it? Like, how do you know what you're really looking out for?
It takes a lot of reflection and self-awareness. So I had this friend of mine who was kind of like lost. Like every job she went to, she would be unhappy about something. And I just did this table for her, which is actually on my blog. This template is on my blog for everyone to benefit from. What is your must have, good to have, and absolutely cannot have? Yeah.
Okay.
And then you just fill in the blanks, right? You write that down, right? Okay, distance from your house. How critical is that, right? Are you willing
Commutes,
to travel like 1.5 hours to work? That kind of thing, that kind of questions. These are things that the answer is different for everyone, but there's no right or wrong. But once you actually define like what's your must have, good to have, and absolutely cannot have, when you go to a job, you are more likely to be satisfied because you know that okay, this actually meets my criteria, and even if I don't have this, it's kind of like a good to have rather than a must have, right?
Okay, so it's about, I mean, we want a lot of things, right? But if you put it under the good to have category, you can sacrifice that if there are other things that they fulfill in the must have category.
Correct. And I think this framework you can apply to everything in your life. Again, like back to friends, dating, kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Absolutely must not have.
Yeah.
Okay, it will be something that there's a landmine and definitely no.
Yeah.
What is something that people might put in their absolutely must not have category?
For some it could be commute, right?
Commute,
Yeah,
okay,
correct.
okay,
For some
okay.
it could be more like they don't want too much bureaucracy kind of thing, because not everybody thrives well in that kind of environment. For some it could be like culture is super important to them because they've been burned badly by an environment which is toxic before, so that's like absolutely critical for them
Okay.
as well.
Unfortunately, you can't really get that answer firsthand, but you have to do whatever we just talked about this whole interview, right? Which
Yeah.
is, doing all your research, talking to people in the industry, right? What if you do not know anyone? Do you reach out to them on LinkedIn?
You can reach out to, I've done that before I joined
okay.
my new role. I reached out to people on LinkedIn, ask for opinions, and stuff like that.
Someone that you did not know beforehand.
Kind of like added as a first connection, but
acquaintance.
not like, buddy kind of friend, right? Yeah, and stuff.
Okay, what do you ask? Like, okay, I might be offered a job in this position.
Yeah. Can I learn more about what it's like? Yeah.
Okay.
And then get on a call, because if you approach someone if you approach someone on LinkedIn and they don't want to tell you the answer.
Yeah, because I don't know you yet, right?
Yeah, that means something's wrong, what? Because if it's good, there'll be no qualms about it, right? But if it's bad, they probably don't want to put it in writing, or they don't want it to come out from their mouth.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's one of the hints that I will get. But so far, lucky for my current role, like everyone is very happy to talk to me and share like why they joined and stuff like that. So I was able to find out the answers that I wanted and to get a good sense of the environment also.
That's a good way to filter, because I don't mind being an ambassador of my company.
If I love it.
If I love it, right?
Yeah,
and
correct.
you might be my new colleague. Yeah, hey, join the company.
Yeah,
It's great.
join,
I
yeah.
love to have you as a colleague.
Correct. But if people are like, kind of like don't want to talk about it, kind of thing, then like something's not right? Yeah. Because they don't want to like say anything that could jeopardize their own like reputation. That means the thing they're going to say is negative, what?
Okay. So that's a telltale sign. Yeah. There's a clue that there could be something
does
there.
it make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this question because, like, if I don't know you, why would I want to tell you about my company?
Yeah, correct. I mean, of course, some people can be really like, closed off. They just ignore the mail and stuff like that. But then, like, if some people, I mean, if you really love it, you will definitely like,
So that tells you something. If someone is like ambivalent, I don't
or
really
they
want
don't
to talk to
answer,
you.
or a
That
lot
tells
of
you
people don't
something.
answer.
Yeah. But if someone is truly passionate about the company, that tells you something.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, no answer is also an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how does passion play a part in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, going back to what I brought up about passion, right? So, like I said, that many people, there's a group of people in this world who are super lucky. They know, like, since young, I want to be a teacher, and now they're a teacher, right?
Oh,
I
like
have
Joseph Schooling, since young, he knows he wants to swim. Like, how do you know that? Was he 11 years old? Like, how do you know that 11 years old?
Yeah, so
okay.
it's a really privileged group of individuals, but luckily, I mean, I guess for many of us, it's not like that. So I would encourage people to think of passion as not like it's a feeling kind of thing, but more like something that you develop over time as you get good in something. So a mistake that many people make is that they would think that, if young, I want to be a pilot, for example, so that's the only path that I can pursue, which is my passion, like my one true love. But it doesn't factor into the consideration that maybe people change, right? Like, for example, the kind of girl you like when you are 13 is different from now, right? Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So the same for passion. The kind of things that I wanted to do at 13 or maybe 15 even is different from what I want to do right now. Yeah.
Okay, and let's say you want to be a pilot, but you might have psychomotor problems.
Yeah, correct.
That might not be suitable for you, for example.
Correct. Or practical realities, like maybe I can't, don't have good eyesight, something like that.
Okay. And maybe you can't do LASIK for some reason. Yeah. Okay, but how would you? Where do you place your passions?
Where do I place my passions?
Yeah, what are your passions in? If I were to ask you this question.
Passion is a really strong word, so I don't really use the word passion much for the things that I do. But I guess that where I derive satisfaction in my life is, of course, career does play a part in my life satisfaction, of course, like the challenge that I get, the learning opportunities that I get, and this is really one of the key factors. But there are also other factors that contribute to my happiness as well. For example, my close friends, right? Being part of the journey together with them, walking this journey together in life, family, of course, and then things like having my own kind of interests outside of work, reading about the things that I like, things like going to museums, things like cycling, hobbies and stuff like that. These are the things that add meaning to my life. Yeah. And of course, the other element that I kind of brought up earlier is volunteer work, and being able to kind of like contribute to my community or my generation's lives, and through content creation, right? These are things that really gives me meaning, and really helps to make my living experience in this earth a lot more memorable.
Okay. Any closing thoughts about work that you might have before we wrap up this part of the conversation?
About work.
Because people are still going to be reading your blogs, they might still be direct messaging you on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and they'll have so many questions about life, about work itself. Any last words before we wrap up?
I guess at the end of the day, it's really important for you to go back to the question and ask yourself, why do you work, right? Like, what is how does work fit into your life, right? Because that will really clear up a lot of misaligned expectations that you may possibly have from your job, right? And help you to really gain satisfaction out of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, like, share, subscribe, and feel free to leave your comments. You can also join our Telegram group, follow us on social media, and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Everything is in the description. For more content, check out thefinancialcoconut.com. I have 3 questions for you. What is one core life principle that you hold?
For me, I have 7 core values.
SAF.
Yeah, that's what people say every time.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I tell a joke where I was telling my brother, like,
I feel like drinking water already. Okay, tell me about your 7 core values. I'm like, water parade, 7 core values. Oh my god, the memory's coming back.
careful soldier.
Yeah. Loyalty to country.
Okay, so
Alright.
of course, I admire some of the values that other organizations and people have, but I also have my own that are important to me. So of course, love is critical to me. And how I define love is nothing. Of course, not just romantic love, but something that extends to the family, the community, and like friends and stuff like that. I categorize that under love itself. Freedom is also critical for me, right? Being able to have the freedom to make my own choices. Growth, gratitude. Being grateful for the things that I have, which would actually keep me in a positive mindset every day. Achievement, respect, and pragmatism. Yeah. So these are the key values that are important to me. And I always tell my audience that, value sounds very fluffy, but once you know that, you can use that as a basis for almost every decision you make in your life. Yeah.
You also write about finance and investing. What is one piece of financial advice that you think should be shared more often?
So, when it comes to finance, everyone likes to talk about the sexy topics like Bitcoin or like this.
To the moon.
Yeah, to the moon, what Elon Musk say and stuff like that. But that is, of course, that may catch attention, but that's not really fundamental. I guess for most people, it's really, getting familiar with the concept of like compounding interest, right? Putting in not starting young basically, so that you can let time work in your favor. Yeah.
Okay. Which part of your life are you giving additional focus right now?
So right now I'm trying to work on my empathy skills, because I think that, I want to be a better support to the people around me, be it my close friends, my family, my readers and stuff like that. So I've been reading a book about like how I can do that a little bit better, and how can be a better listener, right? So instead of always like you try and give suggestion first, it's really more about like identifying the emotions, asking questions, which I feel that, can not only help me in my personal life, but also my professional life as well.
Okay, I would like to ask a bit more about that. So how do you build empathy?
Yeah, so people think empathy is a feeling, correct? But that's not really always the case. Empathy begins with first, like, identifying the emotions, right? Like it does seem that you look kind of sad, and then you kind of justify the emotions for them. Like, I will be sad too if I were you, because da 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 da. And it's not wrong to feel sad. So you kind of validate and justify the emotion for them, so that they don't feel bad about feeling sad, right? That kind of thing. And then after that, you can also thank them for their vulnerability. You can ask permission, right? Do you mind if I share my perspective, right? And stuff like that. So these are some of the ways you can, show empathy. So it's not about like feeling sad when they're sad, but it's really more about like being present and being there for them and being a better support to them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.